Each morning, Harriet Bloom revelled in the serenity of Honey Harbour before the day's bustle set in. With a coffee pot percolating in the cosy kitchen of the Driftwood Inn, she'd tidy a row of sea glass on the windowsill and fuss over the geraniums in their terracotta pots. The smell of salt in the air, mixed with the perfume of freshly baked scones drifting from the oven, a combination that comforted her like an old friend. Harriet had taken over the inn from her great-aunt Clara 3 years ago, determined to maintain its old-world charm, while ensuring every guest felt like they had discovered a hidden gem. Over the decades, the building had accumulated a treasure trove of knickknacks, paintings of ships and stormy seas, postcards from guests who had come and gone, and haphazardly labelled trunks stacked in the attic. Despite the mild chaos, Harriet adored the sense of history stretching through every floorboard and banister. As she arranged the breakfast spread in the dining room, her mind wandered to the rumours that always swirled through town. Tales of lost heirlooms, cryptic diaries, and half-lost secrets that kept a hush of excitement in the harbour air. After setting out dainty teacups beside plates of jam-filled pastries, Harriet made her usual round of the foyer and dining area. She straightened the seahorse umbrella stand, checked that each lamp had enough oil, then paused to admire the antique mirror shaped like a ship's wheel. It was a piece rumoured to have come from the original harbour master's office from decades ago, and though Harriet loved local law, she had never quite confirmed the mirror's provenance. She supposed it was part of the magic some mysteries deserved to remain unsolved. Yet the rumour that teased at her most was the story of a missing painting, said to reveal clues to an unsolved puzzle over a century in the making. Harriet's friend Lucy Farnsworth, the enthusiastic librarian at Honey Harbour's tiny but well-stocked library, once confided that the painting depicted a scene somewhere in town, and that hidden in its details was a code only noticeable upon careful study. What code it unlocked was anyone's guess. Some said it led to a locked trunk left by sea captains. Others swore it would solve the bizarre disappearance of a local merchant in 1903. But the painting itself had vanished decades ago, presumably stowed away in someone's barn or washed out to sea. Harriet's curiosity had simmered ever since Lucy first told her the story. That morning, Harriet couldn't shake the notion she might chance upon it one day. Not that she was actively seeking it, but the idea whispered faintly in the background whenever she rummaged through the inn's storage. She grinned to herself, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. Life at the Driftwood Inn might have been tranquil, but Harriet's mind sparked with the possibility that something extraordinary was waiting just around the corner. Late in the afternoon, Harriet decided to tackle the attic. The attic was a place of mild dread for her. Though she loved rummaging for curios, it was dangerously easy to lose track of time amid dusty chests and precariously stacked boxes. Tall windows framed by thick curtains let in enough light to see dust motes float in the air. The dark wooden floor creaked with each step, like a gentle reminder of countless footsteps over generations. She hauled an old trunk away from its corner and wiped away cobwebs. Inside were mostly moth-eaten linens, a pair of tarnished candelabras, and a water-stained ledger listing arrivals and departures at the inn from the 1920s. Nothing demanded immediate attention, and Harriet was about to shove the trunk aside when a scrap of faded blue fabric caught her eye. It poked out beneath a large wooden crate labelled "Broken Frames, Handle with Care." She slid the crate away carefully, expecting to find a stray cushion or maybe the remains of an old uniform. Instead, she discovered a threadbare sheet draped over a rectangular object. Holding her breath, she pulled back the fabric to reveal an oil painting in a battered gold frame. A quiet thrill coursed through her. Breaking the silence, she summed up the discovery in a single whispered word. Finally. The painting depicted Honey Harbour's wharf as it likely looked a century ago. Tall masts jutted in the distance, sails bridging the water's horizon. A row of red brick warehouses lined one side, while a graceful Victorian house perched on a hill in the background. The brushstrokes felt lively yet detailed. Even through dust and age, the scene practically glowed with the pastel light of a seaside dawn. Harriet mouthed the name of the artist scrawled in the corner. R.M. Caldwell. She remembered Lucy mentioning that name in connection with the missing painting. Carefully, Harriet scooped up the artwork, mindful not to damage the flaky frame, and hurried downstairs to examine it in better light. Once Harriet had wiped away some of the dust, she carefully placed the painting on a sturdy easel near the front desk, where the evening sunlight fell in bright slants on the artwork. For all her curiosity, she found no immediate code or glaring secret hidden in the brushstrokes. But Harriet's eyes homed in on subtle differences from typical harbour scenes. The Victorian house had a distinctive turret, and there appeared to be a minuscule figure in one of the upper windows, a figure so faint that Harriet nearly missed it. She leaned closer, straining her eyes. Yes, there was definitely a shape there, possibly a silhouette of a woman or child. Or maybe it was simply a trick of paint and shadow. Her mind raced with speculation. If this truly was the missing painting, it might hold the key to that legendary puzzle. Without hesitation, she dashed off a quick note to Lucy, inviting her over for an early breakfast the next morning so they could examine the painting together. Harriet was certain her friend's encyclopedic knowledge of local law and old documents would prove invaluable. Though Harriet had guests to attend to that evening, her excitement was nearly impossible to contain. She found herself smiling absent-mindedly as she poured tea, distributed fresh towels, and chatted with visitors about local sea life tours. Even the long-time regular, Mr. Gillespie, noticed her bright demeanour. "You look like you just found a secret, Harriet," he teased, tapping his cane lightly on the floor. Harriet just winked and helped him settle into an overstuffed armchair by the fire. The next morning Lucy blew in with a gust of fresh, salty air. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she balanced a tote bag stuffed with books, notepads, and likely a dozen articles on local art and folklore. "I came as soon as I could," she said, unbuttoning her cardigan. "Where is it?" Harriet guided her to the painting, perched regally on its easel by the front desk. Lucy inhaled sharply, her eyes dancing over every inch of the scene. "Dear me, Harriet. This could be it. The R.M. Caldwell painting everyone's talked about for decades." She set her tote bag on a nearby stool and began flipping through it. "I have some old articles that mention Caldwell's arrangement of hidden clues. They were mostly rumors, of course, but you never know. Where did you find it?" "In the attic, hidden under a crate of broken frames," Harriet replied. "Part of me wonders if Great-Aunt Clara knew it was up there. She was an avid collector, but she never mentioned it. I suspect it might have been left behind by a guest years ago, or maybe she bought it at an estate sale and forgot about it." Lucy nodded, pulling out a magnifying glass. She held it over the paint, scanning for hints. "Legend says Caldwell sometimes painted cryptic references to local riddles. The biggest rumor is that something in his art could solve the century-old puzzle regarding old Miss Winifred Fletcher." Harriet tilted her head. "Winifred Fletcher? I've heard that name, but can't remember the details. She was a shipping tycoon's daughter. A scandal broke out when her father's ledger showed a large withdrawal right before his mysterious disappearance. People guessed he hid gold somewhere in Honey Harbor, but no one found a trace. Winifred was rumored to have a clue, but she died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. The puzzle remains unsolved. Where did her father's fortune go? Some say Caldwell knew the truth. He was friendly with Winifred, and legend has it he encoded her father's secret into one of his paintings. If this is that painting, Harriet, we might be on the brink of a real discovery. It didn't take long for word to spread through Honey Harbor that the elusive Caldwell painting might be in Harriet's possession. Throughout the day, curious townsfolk drifted into the inn, under the pretense of chatting about scones or booking a room. They all subtly angled toward the easel, wide-eyed. Though Harriet wanted to keep the painting safe, she also relished sharing a slice of local history with everyone. She let them admire it from a respectful distance, cautioning them not to touch. That afternoon, Harriet and Lucy decided to study the painting more systematically. Lucy had a reference book with reproductions of some of Caldwell's known works, each with swirling motifs along the edges or subtle messages hidden in clouds or waves. Knowing his style might help them spot patterns. After an hour, Lucy pointed to the lower corner, where an oddly shaped shadow fell across a barrel on the dock. The shape vaguely resembled the letter W. Or perhaps it was just a random swirl of paint. But Harriet recalled the silhouette in the turret window. She compared the two details, suspecting Caldwell had deliberately placed them. "Harriet, what if we list all these anomalies?" Lucy suggested. "We've got a faint silhouette in the turret window, a faint W on a dock barrel, maybe more. Let's write them down." They found other tiny oddities. A cluster of roof shingles shaped like a star, lines in the water that might form cryptic letters, and a faint figure behind a warehouse that might be wearing a top hat. When taken individually, these details remained inconclusive, but Harriet sensed an underlying pattern. She grabbed a pencil and paper, taking notes as Lucy read them aloud. "That's everything we can see for now," Lucy said. "But how do they connect?" Harriet tapped the pencil against her lips. "Maybe it spells out a phrase or points to a location. Winifred Fletcher's family home was rumored to be that Victorian house with the turret, right?" "Yes, and it still stands near the old orchard on the other side of town. No one lives there now. It's considered too expensive to maintain," Lucy replied, shrugging. "We should check the place out." The next day dawned bright and breezy, perfect for a little investigative stroll. Harriet and Lucy set off for the Victorian mansion, having locked the painting safely in Harriet's office. The journey took them away from the waterfront, up a gentle slope lined with sycamores whose leaves rustled in the wind. Eventually they reached a wide iron gate bearing the initials FF, arranged in filigree clearly, for Fletcher. Beyond the gate, the mansion sprawled in a silent testament to the past. Boarded-up windows, peeling paint, and an overgrown garden with wildflowers tangling around broken statues. "This place must be glorious in its day," Harriet whispered as she and Lucy carefully skirted a patch of tall grass. They found the massive front door locked, but Lucy located a side entrance that gave way after some coaxing. Inside the foyer, dust and echoes reigned. They navigated around tattered draperies and antique furniture left to decay. Following the faint memory of the painting, they headed upstairs in search of the turret room. At the top of a narrow spiral staircase, they found a small round chamber with a 360-degree view of the harbour. The windows were cracked in places, but Harriet could see how Caldwell might have painted the silhouette from across the water. A battered bench sat in the middle, its cushions chewed by mice or moths. Lucy carefully inspected the walls, her steps stirring dusty swirls. In a corner, Harriet spotted a framed portrait of Winifred Fletcher leaning against the wall. The woman had a regal bearing, her hair coiled in an old-fashioned style. A stack of mouldy papers lay beside the portrait. Harriet's heart fluttered as she nudged them open, only to find them water-damaged and nearly illegible. Still, some lines stood out. References to The Key, the Orchard Well, and R.M. Caldwell. "Lucy, look." Harriet stretched the papers over a patch of sunlight. "This note mentions the Orchard Well. Could that be the next clue?" Lucy read the faint words, squinting. "It looks like she was planning something with Caldwell. Perhaps he concealed directions in his painting. Maybe the orchard is significant." They carefully folded the brittle papers into a protective folder Lucy kept in her bag. Then, making sure to disturb nothing else, they headed out toward the orchard on the estate's north side. Despite the orchard's wild growth, Harriet and Lucy found a path leading to a cluster of ancient apple trees. The sweet tang of rotting fruit clung to the air. In the center of the orchard, they spotted a stone well, its circular wall covered in moss. Though the wood cover was partially broken, the rope and pulley remained intact. Lucy peered down, but only darkness greeted her. She flicked on a small flashlight she kept in her tote, revealing slimy stones and stagnant water a short way below. Harriet frowned. "Doesn't look like we'll find gold bars down there," she joked, though her voice wavered slightly. She reached for the bucket that sat by the well, shifting it aside. Then she noticed a small iron ring attached to the well's outer edge. It looked ornamental, but Harriet gave it a gentle tug. Nothing. She pulled harder. Slowly, a hidden compartment in the stone creaked open, revealing a waterlogged pouch wrapped in oilcloth. Exchanging a glance of excited disbelief, they carefully unwrapped the pouch. Inside was a sealed envelope, brittle with age, stamped with Winifred Fletcher's name in old-fashioned script. Beneath the envelope lay a tarnished silver key, distinct for its filigree bow reminiscent of the Fletcher gate. Harriet's heart pounded as Lucy gingerly lifted the envelope. The envelope read, "To my heirs, or whomever is wise enough to unravel our story." Lucy glanced at Harriet, who nodded in encouragement. Breaking the seal gently, Lucy unfolded the parchment within. The writing was shaky but still legible. Father's disappearance was no accident, nor was his fortune lost. We entrusted R.M. Caldwell to paint the wharf and embed the final clue to our family secret. If you have found this note, you are worthy of the knowledge. The key opens the locked chest in the turret room, where the final record of Father's fortune rests. Use it wisely and keep the Fletcher name respected. They both looked up, goosebumps pricking their arms. The orchard fell silent around them, as if holding its breath in anticipation. Lucy and Harriet raced back to the mansion's turret room. Sure enough, beneath rotting drapes, an old chest with a rusted lock stood hidden behind a lopsided armoire. Harriet tested the silver key. At first it stuck, but with some effort it turned. The lock clicked, and Harriet lifted the lid. Inside was a small box of sealed documents, each meticulously labelled. One bundle of papers bore the heading Financial Records, detailing bank transactions from the Fletcher Empire. Another bundle contained letters from Mr. Fletcher to Winifred, referencing land purchases throughout the region. The biggest shock came from a bound ledger detailing shares in various shipping companies, real estate deeds, and even evidence of philanthropic donations that were never claimed. Harriet's breath caught as she realized the significance. This estate had once soared on the cusp of wealth, but everything had been lost to rumor and confusion. The rightful owners, if any descendants still existed, could theoretically claim these holdings. Harriet and Lucy found a final sealed note from Winifred, which read, "I had no reason to keep these secrets, but Father insisted. The puzzle was meant to protect his assets until the right person came along, someone honorable enough to piece together the truth and not exploit it. May you carry our family legacy forward." Lucy eased herself onto a dusty chair, shaking her head in wonder. So the code in Caldwell's painting was real. Every strange detail led here. "This is incredible, Harriet." Harriet smiled, but a twinge of responsibility weighed on her. "We have to do the right thing. We should contact the Historical Society, maybe track down any Fletcher descendants. We can't just leave these documents here." "I'll make some calls, do some research," Lucy said determinedly. "But in the meantime, Harriet, we've finished the puzzle. Everyone in Honey Harbor will be amazed." Over the next few weeks, Harriet's life brimmed with a gentle thrill. She stored the documents in a secure deposit box, with Lucy's help, while they reached out to local historians and genealogists. Word spread quickly that Harriet Bloom had helped solve one of Honey Harbor's oldest mysteries. Guests flocked to the Driftwood Inn not just for Harriet's famous blueberry scones, but also for the story of the fabled Caldwell painting. Harriet offered intimate tours of the painting, carefully pointing out the hidden swirl of paint forming a W, the figure in the turret, which was indeed a stylized depiction of Winifred, and the star-shaped shingles referencing the orchard near the well. Representatives from the local museum visited, proposing that the painting should be donated, or at least exhibited for the public. Harriet, ever community-minded, agreed to loan the painting for a special exhibit focusing on Honey Harbour's maritime past, with Lucy drafting informational panels explaining the puzzle. Tales of the orchard, well, the turret chest, and the decades-lost documents swirled through town. Children gazed up at Harriet in awe whenever they crossed her path at the market or the harbour boardwalk, as if she were the town's resident detective. Through Lucy's research, they discovered a distant relative of the Fletcher line living in a neighbouring county, an elderly woman named Florence Fletcher Porter, whose grandfather was Winifred's cousin. When Harriet and Lucy contacted her, Florence arrived in Honey Harbour with tears in her eyes. She had heard rumours in her family about lost fortunes and secrets, but never had the details. Holding the old documents, Florence was speechless, gazing over a piece of her family's heritage she never expected to recover. "It's remarkable," Florence said, tracing a finger across the ledger. All this time, no one guessed Caldwell's painting was still in town. These records, they'll help me piece together our family story. And if there's any financial restitution to be had, I'd like part of it to benefit the community, just as my ancestors originally intended. Harriet gently squeezed Florence's hand. "That's wonderful. Winifred left these clues hoping her father's legacy would be honored. I think that's exactly what you're doing." In the months that followed, Honey Harbour celebrated the story's resolution with a small festival, complete with a Caldwell Puzzle Tours series, orchestrated by Lucy. A bus of art students even visited from farther up the coast to study the hidden messages in the painting. The orchard well was repaired, sealed for safety, and outfitted with a plaque describing its role in the century-old mystery. The Victorian mansion, once forlorn and decrepit, gained new hope. Backed by a modest trust from Florence Fletcher Porter, volunteers began cleaning up the property, with plans for partial restoration as a cultural site. Harriet soon noticed how the painting's presence at the local museum drew in more visitors. The Driftwood Inn thrived, and Harriet never tired of recounting to each new face the day she found the painting in her attic. She'd end each storytelling session with a twinkle in her eye, saying, "It just goes to show, sometimes the greatest treasures hide right under your nose." People marveled at the measure of serendipity involved, but Harriet believed her good fortune was also a testament to Honey Harbour's heritage. This was a town that carefully preserved its stories, passing them along from generation to generation like a cherished keepsake. And Harriet, ever curious, always ready to lend an ear, had simply been the latest caretaker of the harbour's tapestry of secrets. On a quiet evening after the festival's conclusion, Harriet sat in the empty dining room of the Driftwood Inn. The gas lights flickered softly, casting warm hues across the old oak tables. She sipped her tea, reflecting on how much had changed since uncovering the painting. A swirl of satisfaction coursed through her. The puzzle was solved, yet it felt like there would always be new stories waiting to be discovered in Honey Harbour. Maybe they wouldn't all be as grand or mysterious, but Harriet knew better than anyone that every old trunk and attic corner held the promise of hidden tales. She rose from her seat and made her way toward the parlours, checking that each lamp was turned down for the night. She paused by the windowsill where a fresh batch of sea-glass glittered in the dim light. Lucy had dropped them off earlier, claiming they were the clearest sea glass she'd ever found on a morning beach walk. Harriet smiled, thinking of her friend's unwavering enthusiasm and how they'd cracked the code together. As she climbed the stairs to her own apartment above the inn, Harriet let her fingers trail along the banister. The hum of history comforted her. She felt closer than ever to her great-aunt Clara, to Winifred Fletcher, and even to Caldwell, whose brushstrokes had bridged a century. This was a place built on small curiosities and shared stories, each one weaving a part of the tapestry that bound the community together. Harriet glanced at the door to the attic, recalling how a single dusty painting had changed the rhythm of her days. She flicked off the hallway light, whispering a quiet good night to the harbour beyond her windows. Moments later, she settled into bed, the steady lull of the sea whispering through a cracked window. In her half-dreaming state, Harriet imagined new mysteries dancing in the corners of Honey Harbour, waiting for the next curious soul to come along and discover them. And, in that serene stillness, she smiled, utterly content in the knowledge that she had helped preserve a small but significant piece of the harbour's legacy.